What if I told you that your relentless pursuit of positivity is slowly destroying your ability to survive reality? That the very thing society tells you will save you might be the exact mechanism that's trapping you in a cycle of self-deception? Let me paint you a picture. You wake up every morning, scroll through your phone, and absorb dozens of messages telling you to think positive, manifest your dreams, and choose happiness. But here's what nobody talks about. Your brain has a negativity bias for a reason. For thousands of years, the humans who survived were the ones who could spot danger, anticipate problems, and prepare for the worst. The optimists? Many of them didn't make it long enough to pass on their genes. They were the ones who walked confidently toward the rustling bushes, assuming it was just the wind, while the pessimists lived another day by assuming it might be a predator. So what happens when you force yourself to see only the bright side? First, you develop what I call reality blindness. Your brain literally starts filtering out information that contradicts your positive worldview. That toxic relationship? He's just going through a rough patch. That failing business venture? Success is just around the corner. Those mounting debts? Money will find a way. Your mind becomes a sophisticated editing machine, cutting out anything that doesn't fit the narrative of perpetual optimism. Second, you lose your emotional immunity. Think of negative emotions like your psychological immune system. Fear protects you from danger by making you cautious around genuine threats. Anger motivates you to set boundaries when others cross your limits. Sadness helps you process loss and adapt to new circumstances. Anxiety keeps you alert to potential problems before they become crises. When you constantly suppress these emotions, you're like someone taking immune suppressants. The first real crisis that hits and you're completely defenseless, with no emotional antibodies to help you fight back. But here's where it gets really disturbing. The people around you start to notice your positive behavior. They begin to rely on it. You become the eternal optimist, the one who never complains, who always has an encouraging word, who can be counted on to lighten the mood. You've trapped yourself in a prison of artificial positivity, and the bars are made of other people's expectations. Now you can't express genuine concerns without people saying that's not like you, or just think positive. Your authentic self starts to suffocate under the weight of everyone else's expectations. Meanwhile, your real problems compound in the shadows, growing larger and more dangerous because you've trained yourself and everyone around you to ignore them. You become the person who smiles while drowning because admitting you're struggling would shatter the image you've spent years building. But there's something even more insidious happening. When you only acknowledge positive outcomes, you stop making contingency plans. You don't save money for emergencies because everything will work out. You don't develop backup career skills because passion is enough. You don't prepare for relationship challenges because love conquers all. You don't even consider what might go wrong because thinking about failure feels like betraying your positive mindset. You've essentially turned yourself into a psychological sitting duck, completely exposed when life decides to take its inevitable shots. Here's what the positive thinking industry doesn't want you to know. The most resilient people aren't the most positive ones. They're the most realistic ones. They acknowledge both possibilities, success and failure. They hope for the best while preparing for the worst. They feel their negative emotions fully, then use that information to make better decisions. They don't suppress fear. They listen to what it's trying to tell them about potential dangers. These people understand that life isn't a Disney movie. It's complex, unpredictable, and often brutal. But instead of hiding from that reality behind a wall of forced smiles and affirmations, they dance with it. They know that true strength doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from facing whatever isn't fine and dealing with it anyway. They've learned that you can acknowledge the storm while still believing you'll find shelter. So let me ask you this. What if the key to genuine happiness isn't thinking positive thoughts, but thinking accurate thoughts? What if instead of toxic positivity, we practice something I call compassionate realism? This means acknowledging that life includes both joy and suffering, that relationships require work, compromise, and sometimes difficult conversations. That success demands sacrifice, persistence, and the willingness to fail multiple times. That some days will be terrible, and that's not a personal failing or a sign that you're not grateful enough. It's simply being human in a world that doesn't care about your mood. When you stop running from reality, something beautiful happens. You start making decisions based on truth rather than wishful thinking. You build genuine resilience instead of brittle optimism. You develop authentic relationships instead of performative ones where everyone has to pretend everything is always wonderful. You become what I call anti-fragile. Someone who doesn't just survive challenges, but actually grows stronger from them. The people who truly thrive in this world aren't the ones who pretend it's perfect. They're the ones brave enough to see it clearly and love it anyway. They understand that acknowledging darkness doesn't make you negative, it makes you prepared. And being prepared, having contingency plans, building real resilience, that's the most genuinely positive thing you can do. So here's my question for you. What reality have you been avoiding in the name of staying positive? What problems have been growing in the shadows while you've been forcing yourself to focus only on the light? And what would change in your life if you finally had the courage to look at them directly, without judgment, and start dealing with them one by one?